Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now to a little poem, 20 Years. This is poem 47 of the 58 of Sands at 70. Now this is one of the reasons, this poem is one of the reasons why we call this series Talks with Walt. Whitman, we are told, loved to converse. He loved to have conversations. He'd sit, for example, in the stagecoach with the driver and have these conversations, or with one of the sailors, and he'd have a conversation here. It will be with a sailor. I love this poem because it captures in some brilliant ways the kind of experience that Whitman had to have loved in his younger years, and then, of course, missed in his older years, having conversations with people. Now, our assumptions that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down the left-hand side, Talks with Walt, our playlist, and that you have as well listened to our introductory set of comments for Sands at 70, and we just finished with Prairie Sunset, of course. Now, our Nortons will tell us about this poem, that it was first published in the Magazine of Art, New York, July 1888, and then it was reprinted in the Magazine of Art in New York in September of 1888, which is fascinating when you think about it, because what really we're dealing with here is almost like a reflection, a memory of a conversation that Whitman had. Down on the ancient wharf, notice he's used adjective ancient, the sand I sit, with a newcomer chatting. And again, you know, we called it Talks with Walt, we could have called it Chats with Walt. He shipped his green handboy, think about child went forth, and sailed away, took some sudden vehement notion. And obviously this makes us think of that opening, those opening lines of Melville's Moby Dick and Ishmael saying that, you know, it just kind of happened that I decided to get on a boat and sail away. Since 20 years and more have circled round and round, while he, the globe, was circling round and round. We obviously think of Odysseus here. And now returns, how changed the place. And you could make the argument that this is a whole lot of what Leaves of Grass has been about. How changed America has changed in the lifetime of Whitman, obviously in the writing of all these poems. But notice this guy was a world traveler, and now, and we think of Passage to India, right? And now, here he is back. Notice, all the old landmarks gone. And of course, this happened in Whitman's own life, right? New York City itself changed radically during Whitman's life. The parents, dead. In other words, he was gone so long. And we live in a time when, you know, you take a trip, you come back. I mean, we're unaccustomed to imagining that you could take a 20-year trip. And yet, many times, sailors would find themselves doing something kind of similar to that. And then, in parenthetic, it's almost like now he's trying to capture the conversation. Yes, he comes back, and then notice italicized, to lay in port for good, to settle. In other words, now that I'm back in Ithaca, I'm ready to settle down. Has a well-filled purse, no spot will do but this. And now we're back to kind of their surroundings. Whitman likes to almost like pan back, it's almost like video, pan back, to show us what he is seeing. The little boat that sculled him from the sloop, now held in leash I see. I hear the slapping waves. Notice, I hear, I see, I scan. I hear the slapping waves, the restless keel, the rocking in the sand. I see the sailor kit, the canvas bag, the great box bound with brass. I scan the face. Whitman's always about faces. What does he say in Song of Myself 47? He could see God in the face of himself in the glass, but also in faces of men and women. I see God. The face, all berry brown and bearded. Whitman's always about his beards, hair, right, facial hair. The stout, strong frame, dressed in his russet suit of good Scotch cloth. What an eye, right? He's got a great eye. And then in parenthetics, then, what the told out story of those 20 years? What of the future? I love how this poem ends. In other words, yeah, what's going to happen next? I've done 20 years now, and now I'm back. What happens next? And obviously, this makes sense to put this in a collection called Sands at 70, because you've got Whitman himself trying to come to terms with the idea, what do I do? What do I do next? How do I end my life? I think in two ways the message here is clear. All of life is made up of these small journeys, sometimes even 20 years, but sooner or later, that's how it always works. At 2B, we get to listen in on a conversation. I love this poem because of that. It's like, you can see Whitman sitting there on the beach, the little boat that brought him from the large ship, and there he is saying, I've done it, I came back, my mom and daddy are gone now, I'm trying to think it through, but I'm probably done with my sailing life. And 3A, obviously, we're thinking of Homer's Odyssey, but I want to as well reference 3 great texts of Joseph Conrad, that great writer who was also a sailor. You'll remember in O Youth, Pass Me the Bottle, right, of 1898, and then obviously Heart of Darkness. We've given lectures on it at learnstrong.net of 1899, and then finally Lord Jim, the 1900 year of writing. I mean, those 3 volumes obviously could constitute enough great writing for a single writer, and obviously with Secret Share and others, we've got a whole lot of other texts of Conrad's. Finally, in 3B, just to kind of wrap our brain around how you would own a text like this, what is the coolest conversation that you ever had with somebody who has maybe had experiences with you that you didn't know? I once had a student say, I had a conversation like this with a guy I met at an airport, and we were just passing and just sat and talked. And it's similar in that he just kind of gave up his life or whatever. Well, I challenge you to think about that. Thank you.